Today's video is going to show you how to break down the standard 75 series PL1. It's a Decocker. This is a new inbox gun. Nothing's been done to it. We're going to be installing the Pro package. Some of the tools that we're going to use: just a gunsmith mallet. It's got a PTFE end and a brass end. I like to use a rubber jeweler's block. Just pick this up off of Amazon, drilled a hole in it so the punches can go through there. You can see this one's seen better days. Screwdriver. I like this one because it's got, multiple ends, so I don't have to carry too many tools. A pick with a 90-degree turn is my preference, and you'll see that some of the other guys around here, we all just kind of make our own tools sometimes and use other stuff, but I like also using a straight pick. We have our starter punch here, which is 3/8 neck down to 1/16, a regular 1/16 punch. We have a 5/64 roll pin punch, and this is a 3mm roll pin punch. I have just stuck a bushing on there because sometimes I polish rollers, and this makes it to where it doesn't slide down and get stuck there. It rolls a little easier. That's the only reason I've done that. And then probably the most common thing I use are some forceps or tweezers. And the biggest thing that just helps a lot of people is I've modified this a little bit. These were really smooth. I've clamped them together and filed them so that they match up really well. But I've also, what you probably can't see on the video, is I've filed a couple of small grooves in here, and I'll show you later in the installation why that's important to do that. And this is pretty much the basic setup of the things that we use most of the time. And we also have a steel bench block for driving hammer pins in and out. The first thing I like to do is go ahead and take the grips off. One thing that we never tell anybody, just because we don't think about it, is we only ever open up one gun on our bench at a time to make sure that we don't mix up parts. So it's a good thing if you're working on your gun, make sure you don't have any of your other guns sitting out there that you've gotten worked on and mix in some of the projects. You end up with a spring that belongs to another gun, and you'll be wondering where it goes. But we're going to go ahead and field strip the gun as well. So we're just going to rock back. CZ slide stops are notorious for being difficult to get out, so we just kind of tap on it with a hammer and take a punch to finish it. As the gun wears in, it'll get a little bit easier, but this being a brand new one, I'm just going to set the frame out of the way over here. Take the recoil spring and barrel out. This one won't be getting sights, so I'm just going to be taking the roll pin out of here. This is our 3mm roll pin punch. And we use Mayhew punches. Now, one thing I'll tell you is these factory roll pins can be kind of difficult to get started because a roll pin punch has this little button right in the end to help center it in that punch. If you don't hit it hard enough in the beginning, the punch will have a tendency to kind of, instead of digging into this hole in the center of the pin, it'll bounce. And so if you're hitting it not hard enough, sometimes it'll bounce and you'll hit your serrations and ding the polycoat there. So to avoid that, the first time, set it on there real firm, hold it down, and give it a good whack, just to make sure it seats in that pin, and that you can kind of take it easy. Now, I'm in an office right now, so I'm not at my workbench. This desk is going to kind of give, and stuff's going to bounce around a little bit more. Be careful, this shouldn't, the firing pin shouldn't shoot out, but I like to just hold it down because the firing pin block is still holding it. Now, if you just press in on the firing pin block, that'll just fall out. And we see a lot of people, they mess up because the thing that didn't come out of here is the firing pin spring. So I've got a little dental pick here that I've actually bent the end just a little bit so I can reach up in here and pull that out. I can't tell you how many times we've had people leave that in there, put our spring on top of it, which is incredible that you can even fit it in there. But then, of course, the gun doesn't fire because you've got two firing pin springs in there. But that's it. The slide's completely broken down, at least for the Pro package. We don't normally take the extractor out unless there's an extraction issue. So I'll set this over to the side. Go ahead and separate this out. And so we're going to break down the frame. The first thing I like to do is take the hammer spring out just to get that pressure off the hammer. There's no specific order that you have to do this in. You can actually get the Seer cage out, but sometimes if you forget and have the hammer cocked, when you take the pin out of there, then stuff just goes flying, and that's no fun because there's a lot of little stuff in there that you might not be able to find. So I'm going to take a regular 1/16 punch, set it right here. Some of these almost fall out, but a lot of them, just like this one on the new gun, you kind of have to drive it out. And so you just pull up on this. You'll see that this mag guide here has this little curve. You can put this back together. The right order is to hold the gun down, to press it, and stick this in here as you put the pin back in here. We try to make this a lot easier, so what we do is we cut this off. Just right here at the end where it starts to bend, we'll cut it off right there with just some wire cutters, and that makes it to where you can put this back in without having to finagle the pin, and will fight against the spring. And you don't want to cut it off too short, because if you cut it off flat, this can flex and it can actually come loose as you shoot and cause some problems there. But you just want to kind of cut it off, leave about 1/8 to 3/16 of an inch right there to make sure that you have plenty to keep it straight, keep it from rattling around. And so I'm just going to use my bench block. I'm going to press down on this so that I can push the pin out, and then the hammer spring and the plug just come out. It's just under the tension of the spring, and the grips keep it from coming out. And so now the next step is going to be to take the decocker lever out of the gun, and so I'm going to take my punch and just slide it up under here, because the only thing that holds this in is the Seer spring, and it lays in this groove right here. And so by lifting that up just a little bit, you don't want to bend it, because if I took this and I stretched it all the way up, there is a groove that you can set it on. But what the problem with that is you risk bending this out of the shape and ruining that spring. And otherwise, the spring doesn't move enough to really wear out. So I'm just barely going to lift it up, and I'm going to push just a little bit to get that started. And so now you can set that down and just pull the lever straight out of the gun, just like that. Now for a brand new gun, you can see that's got a little bit of fitting on there already. So the next step is to take this little disc out, and you don't want to lose that. It's necessary to be in the gun to keep the lever from, or keep the Seer pin from walking out. Some of these you can actually just push on. You have to be careful. You don't want to slip and then gouge the gun. This one's kind of stuck pretty good, so I'm going to take my punch on the inside. Just see if I can do this so that you can see. And I'm just going to tap on it. So that just came right out. If you do lose that part, that's a number 63. Some of the older models, it's not round, but the new part will work in there. And so here comes the scary part that everybody doesn't like, is the Decocker Seer cage. And so this pin is only made to come in and out of this side of the gun. This side of the hole is actually a little bit smaller diameter. So we have had people drive the pin out this way, and you can fix that. I'll show you that in just a second. But the pin has to come out of the left side of the gun. And we say left side because if I was holding this gun like I was going to shoot, this is the left side of the gun, and that's how CZ identifies their parts. So we're just going to get that started. Pull the pin out, and I like to put my thumb over all those little springs as I pull my pin out, and then turn it down and just let gravity do the work. And so that came out. Everything's still kind of sitting in there. So if I push this out of the bottom of the Seer cage, I've got my lifter spring, decocker spring, Seer spring, and all three of my levers. This is the lifter spring. It's a really important part in the gun, and if you booger this up, it's not a bad idea to have an extra one. And it's just, if you go on our website, the part number is L spring. L and then the word spring for lifter spring. And it's the same spring for all the models. And if you're doing the Pro Package install yourself, wouldn't hurt to have an extra one of those, because it's really easy to lose and break. So the next thing to come out is going to be this number 19 pin. And we're just going to push it out. I do want to show you something later, so we're gonna pull that off to the side, and then the hammer pivot pin can come out. This pin right here, we're just gonna pull that out, and the entire hammer assembly will come out. Now, because this one is getting a pro package, I'm going to be putting a Cajun Gun Works race hammer in this gun with our disconnector, but I need the strut. So I'm going to take this, and what I use is I've got this old 1/16 punch that I broke, and so I've cut it down just a little bit, and I didn't even have to hammer that. I'll just take that apart right there, and there's the pin. Now, what I wanted to show you here is sometimes people mess this up. You can see this is a factory hammer pin, and this is a number 19 pin. You can see that the hammer pin is just slightly longer, but they're exactly the same diameter. If you mess up and you put this hammer pin in this number 19 pin, the 19 pin fits in this little hole. And I'm going to stick this hammer pin to show you. If you put a hammer pin in that hole, this one, see how easy that went? But it actually sticks up just a little bit, maybe not even a 1/16 of an inch, but your sear cage, this little part right here, catches in this notch, and that will prevent the sear cage from going in. So we're going to pull that back out. Just need to make sure that you don't lose that pin. If you do, and you don't have access to another pin, you can just shave a little bit of material off of the hammer pin, and it'll work as a replacement. So the next thing is another part that kind of scares people sometimes, is getting the trigger pin out. And I can't stress how important it is when you knock this pin out. You have to hit it deliberately. You don't have to hit it like you're trying to break the gun, but I'm going to set this starter punch right on top of that. And in one hit, I could feel it sink in, and you can kind of see where it recessed. It's poking out the other side. And I'm going to take my 5/64 roll pin punch and just finish driving it on out. This is another thing, you don't want to just pull this out, because you've still got the trigger return spring in here holding tension. So flip it upside down, pull that out, and you'll keep from launching that across the room. Although this does come in the pro package, so you don't really need that part. But at this point, the frame is completely disassembled. I'm going to take the trigger off of the trigger bar, and I'm going to show you too, this pin that holds the trigger on the trigger bar. This is the same thing as a hammer pin. This is the exact same size. So we would normally reuse this to pin that back together, but if you need to use that for a hammer pin or vice versa, it'll work just fine. But that is the complete disassembly to install a pro package in a 75 series decocker, which would be the P01, 75 BD, the SP01 Tactical is almost identical, other than it has an ambidextrous decocker.